Anita Baptiste thought writing letters to an inmate was harmless therapy. 2 years of pouring her soul onto paper as Naomi to a man she'd never meet. She told him everything, her fears, her dreams, the loneliness that consumed her. She made promises she never intended to keep because he was supposed to stay locked away for decades. But when Park Tae-young walked out of prison 3 years early, he didn't just want answers about why Naomi ghosted him. He wanted the woman who invited him into her soul. And when he discovered she was the daughter of a man who owed him $500,000,
What is it?
the letters weren't just confessions anymore. They were a contract written in ink and sealed with her father's debt. Before we reveal how a pen pal program became a mafia boss's hunting ground, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Let's build this community together. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight in Seattle, turning the streets into mirrors that reflected the gray sky back at itself. Anita Baptiste stood at the reference desk of the Greenwood Public Library, watching water stream down the tall windows, and felt that familiar hollow ache settle in her chest, the one that had lived there since her mother died 18 months ago. She was 28 years old, beautiful in a way she'd stopped noticing. Dark skin that glowed even under fluorescent lights, natural hair she kept in neat twists, and eyes that held too much sadness for someone so young. She wore cardigans over simple dresses, sensible shoes, and a smile that never quite reached those eyes. "Miss Baptiste?" An elderly patron approached with a stack of mystery novels. "These are due back next Thursday, right?" "Actually, Mrs. Chen, you have them for 2 weeks." Anita scanned the books, her movements automatic after 5 years behind this desk. "So, that's the 15th. "Oh, wonderful. You know, dear, you should smile more. Such a pretty girl shouldn't look so sad all the time." Anita's professional smile tightened. If she had $1 for every time someone told her to smile more, she could quit this job. "Have a great day, Mrs. Chen." The library was nearly empty, just the usual afternoon crowd of students pretending to study while scrolling on their phones and retirees hiding from the rain. Anita glanced at the clock. 4:30. Another hour and a half until she could go home to her tiny studio apartment in Ballard, heat up leftover curry goat her aunt had brought over, and do the one thing that actually made her feel less alone. Write to him. Her phone buzzed, a text from her father. "Baby girl, can we talk? I need a small favor." Anita deleted it without responding, just like she'd deleted the 17 other messages he'd sent this month. Devin Baptiste had a lot of nerve calling her baby girl after disappearing for 3 years to chase some business deal in South Korea, coming back broken, and then having the audacity to ask her for money every other week. She wasn't doing it anymore. Not after her mother had died waiting for him to come home. The rain picked up, drumming harder against the windows. Anita organized the return cart, her mind already drifting to the letter she'd write tonight. It had been 6 months since she'd sent one, but she still thought about it. About him. About the stranger in cell block D who'd somehow become the only person she could be completely honest with. It started so innocently. 18 months ago, drowning in grief after burying her mother, Anita had stumbled across a website called Letters of Hope, a pen pal program connecting people with inmates. The description promised meaningful connections, personal growth, and the opportunity to bring light into someone's darkness. She'd been desperate for light herself. The program let participants use pseudonyms for safety. She chose Naomi, her mother's middle name. They matched her with inmate number 47293 at FCI SeaTac, a federal facility 40 minutes south. The profile was sparse. Male, 35, serving 20 years for racketeering and conspiracy. Eligible for correspondence. No violent offenses. She wrote the first letter on a Tuesday night, 3 glasses of wine deep, tears still wet on her face. Dear 47293, I don't know why I'm doing this. Maybe because talking to someone who can't leave feels safer than talking to people who already have. My mother died 6 weeks ago. Pancreatic cancer. She was only 56. I held her hand when she took her last breath, and I've been holding my breath ever since, waiting to figure out how to live in a world without her. I'm not looking for advice or sympathy. I just needed to tell someone who won't look at me with pity, someone who won't tell me it gets easier or that she's in a better place. I needed to tell someone the truth. I'm so angry at her for leaving. And I'm so angry at myself for being angry. I don't expect you to write back. Naomi. She'd mailed it before she could change her mind. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived. The handwriting was precise, almost architectural, each letter carefully constructed in black ink on standard prison stationery. Naomi. You wrote to me because I can't leave. That's honest. I respect honesty. Your mother didn't leave you. Cancer took her. Your anger isn't wrong. It's human. When we lose someone, rage is easier than grief, because grief means accepting they're gone. Rage lets us keep fighting even when there's nothing left to fight. I lost someone too. Not to death, but to choices. My choices. I'm in here because I chose power over people, control over connection. Now I have neither. You said you didn't expect me to write back. I'm writing back because your honesty reminded me of something I'd forgotten, that vulnerability isn't weakness. In here, weakness gets you killed. But your letter, it wasn't weak. It was brave. If you want to keep writing, I'll keep reading. No pity, no platitudes, just truth. 47293. Anita read that letter 7 times the first night. Then she wrote back, and he responded. And suddenly, over the next 2 years, inmate number 47293 became the most consistent presence in her life. She told him everything. About growing up in a Jamaican household in South Seattle, where her mother cooked jerk chicken every Sunday, and her father was always chasing the next big opportunity. About her English degree she'd never used for anything except shelving books. About the creative writing dreams she'd abandoned. About the loneliness that felt like a physical weight on her chest. He told her about growing up in Busan, South Korea, a port city where the ocean met the mountains. About a childhood split between his mother's small restaurant and his father's even smaller fishing boat. About the scholarship to study business in Seoul that changed everything. About the choices that led him to federal prison in America, which he never fully explained but hinted at with careful language about family obligations and protecting what's mine. He never told her his name. She never asked. They created a world in those letters, a space where Anita could be brutally honest about her fears and dreams, where she could admit that most days she felt invisible, where she could confess that she'd stopped believing good things happened to people like her. Dear number 47293, do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? Like you woke up one day and discovered you'd been cast in the wrong movie? I'm 27 years old, and I feel like I've already missed my chance at everything that matters. Love, adventure, creating something that lasts. My mother used to say, Anita, you're too careful. Life is short. Jump. But what if I jump and there's nothing to catch me? Naomi. Naomi. You're not living the wrong life. You're living the safe life. There's a difference. I've jumped. I've fallen. I've hit the ground so hard I thought I'd never get up. And you know what I learned? The falling isn't the worst part. The worst part is standing on the edge forever, too scared to find out if you can fly. You asked if there's anything to catch you. Maybe there isn't. Maybe you hit the ground and you bleed and you break, but at least you'll know. At least you'll have lived instead of watching from the reference desk. Jump, Naomi. I'll be here when you need to tell someone about the landing. Numbered 47293. The letters got deeper, more intimate. She told him about the recurring dream where she was drowning and couldn't scream. He told her about the nightmares where he was free but everyone he loved was dead. She told him she'd never been in love. Not real love, because she'd never felt safe enough to let someone that close. He told her that love and safety were often opposites, and maybe that was the point. Dear, a 47293, I keep thinking about what you said about love and safety. You're right. The safest thing I could do is never let anyone close enough to hurt me. But God, I'm so tired of being safe. I'm so tired of going home to an empty apartment and eating dinner alone and pretending I'm fine with this half-life I've built. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like to meet you, to see your face instead of just your handwriting, to hear your voice instead of reading your words in my head. Is that crazy? You're in prison. I don't even know what you look like, but I feel like I know you better than anyone. Does that make sense? Naomi. His response took 4 days, longer than usual. Naomi. It makes sense. I think about meeting you too. I imagine you're beautiful, but not in the way people usually mean. I imagine you have kind eyes that don't miss anything, and a smile you save for people who've earned it. I imagine your voice is softer than your words, but your words hit harder than most people's fists. I imagine walking into a room and seeing you for the first time, and finally understanding why men go to war over women who make them feel seen. You see me, Naomi. Through these letters, you see parts of me I didn't know existed anymore. Is it crazy? Maybe. But I've been in here for 2 years, and your letters are the only thing that makes me remember I'm still human. When I get out, if I get out, I'm going to find you. Not to hurt you, not to trap you, but to look you in the eyes and say thank you for giving me something to survive for. Number 47293. That letter terrified her. Because somewhere in the 2 years of correspondence, this had stopped being therapy and started being something else, something real, something dangerous. She wrote back immediately, her hands shaking. Dear 47293, you can't find me. You understand that, right? This is just letters, just words on paper. We don't actually know each other. I used a fake name for a reason. You're in there for 20 years. This is safe because there's no risk. There's no chance of this becoming real. That's the whole point. I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong impression. I care about you, I do, but we can't. This can't be more than what it is. Naomi. She never sent it. Instead, she stopped writing altogether. 6 months ago, she put the pen down and didn't pick it back up. She told herself it was for the best, that she'd gotten too attached to a fantasy, that inmate number 47293 would forget about her eventually and move on with his 20-year sentence. She told herself she'd done the right thing, but on nights like tonight, standing in the rain-soaked library, watching the clock tick toward closing time, Anita wondered if the right thing and the safe thing were the same thing after all. Her phone buzzed again. Her father, persistent as always. Please, Anita, just 5 minutes. It's important. She sighed and called him back. Anita, baby girl, thank God. What do you want, Dad? She kept her voice low, glancing around the empty library. I'm at work. I need to see you, tonight. It's about something I did. Something I need to explain before what? Before you ask me for more money? I already told you, this isn't about money, Devin's voice cracked. This is about keeping you safe. I made a mistake, baby girl, a big one. And I need to warn you before... The call dropped. Or he hung up. Anita stared at her phone, that familiar anger rising in her chest. Her father was always in trouble, always making mistakes, always expecting her to clean up his messes, not this time. She turned off her phone, finished her shift, and walked home through the rain. 3,000 miles away, in a private terminal at JFK International Airport, Park Tae-yang stepped off a chartered jet and breathed American air for the first time in 3 years. He was 38 years old and looked like violence wrapped in expensive fabric, 6 feet of lean muscle, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. His black hair was longer than regulation, pushed back from his face. Traditional Korean dragon tattoos coiled up both arms, disappearing under the sleeves of his perfectly tailored black Tom Ford suit. On his left hand, a silver ring with a dragon's head. On his right wrist, a Patek Philippe that cost more than most people's cars. The King of Busan had returned. "Boss!" Choi Min-jun, his second in command, fell into step beside him, shorter, stockier, with a jagged scar across his jaw and a full sleeve of koi fish tattoos. "The cars are waiting. Hotel's secured. I've got the information you requested on the Baptiste situation." Tae-yang didn't respond. He was reading a letter, the last one she'd sent 6 months ago. The one that said, "This can't be more than what it is." He'd read it 500 times, memorized every word, analyzed every hesitation in her handwriting. She'd gotten scared. She'd felt it too, that pull between them, and it terrified her. Good. Fear meant it was real. "The father first," Tae-yang said quietly, folding the letter with surgical precision and slipping it into his jacket pocket. "I want to understand exactly how deep this betrayal goes before I visit her." About that, Min-jun handed him a tablet showing a photograph of a middle-aged black man with graying temples and desperate eyes, Devin Baptiste. "He's in the wind. Left his apartment in Tacoma 2 days ago. My sources say he knows you're out." Tae-yang's jaw tightened. "And the daughter?" "Works at Greenwood Public Library. Lives alone in Ballard. No security. No idea you're coming." Min-jun pulled up another photo, a surveillance image of a young woman leaving the library, hood up against the rain, face partially obscured, but Tae-yang would have known her anywhere. The way she moved, shoulders slightly hunched, like she was trying to take up less space in the world. The careful way she stepped over puddles, always cautious, never jumping. Naomi. No. Anita. "She doesn't know who her father really is, does she?" Tae-yang asked. "Doubt it. Devin kept his business dealings separate from his family. The wife died before she could find out about the debt. The daughter? She's clean, boss. No criminal record, no connections, just a librarian who writes letters to prisoners." Tae-yang stared at the photograph. 2 years of letters. 2 years of the most honest, vulnerable, beautiful words he'd ever read. 2 years of falling in love with a woman he'd never met. And now he knew the truth. Her father had set the whole thing up. Devin Baptiste had owed Tae-yang's organization $500,000 from a smuggling deal that went bad 3 years ago. When Tae-yang got arrested by the FBI and extradited to federal prison, Devin thought he was safe. Thought the debt died with the king's freedom. But 6 months into Tae-yang's sentence, Devin discovered something interesting. His daughter had signed up for a prison pen pal program, and she'd been matched with inmate number 47293, the same inmate who'd put a price on Devin's head before getting locked up. So Devin did what desperate men do. He gambled. He let his daughter write those letters. Let her pour her soul onto paper for the man who wanted him dead. Let a connection form, deepen, grow into something real. Because if the King of Busan fell in love with Anita Baptiste, maybe, just maybe, Devin could use that love to negotiate his debt away. It was brilliant, really. Manipulative, cruel. Exactly the kind of play Tae-yang would have made himself, which was why it made him so viciously angry. "Where is she right now?" Tae-yang asked, his voice dangerously soft. Min-jun checked his phone. "Just got home. Ballard apartment. Alone." "Good." Tae-yang handed back the tablet and walked toward the waiting black SUV. "I'm going to have a conversation with Naomi, and then I'm going to find her father and have a very different kind of conversation. Boss, you want backup? For a librarian?" Tae-yang's smile was cold. "I think I can manage." But as he slid into the SUV and the door closed behind him, his hand went to the letter in his pocket. Her letter, her words. "This can't be more than what it is." "We'll see about that, Naomi," he whispered to the rain-streaked window. We'll see. Anita's studio apartment was exactly what you'd expect from a librarian's salary in Seattle. Tiny, tidy, and filled with books. The walls were lined with shelves she'd assembled herself, crammed with everything from Caribbean literature to Korean dramas on DVD. A small kitchen, a smaller bathroom, a bed that doubled as a couch, one window overlooking a parking lot. Home. She dropped her bag by the door, peeled off her wet cardigan, and went straight to the kitchen to heat up the curry goat. The rain had followed her home, tapping against the window like it wanted inside. Her phone, still off, sat on the counter like an accusation. She should call her father back. He'd sounded genuinely scared on that call, and despite everything, he was still her dad. But she was so tired of being the person who fixed things, the person who showed up, the person who cared more than anyone else. Anita ate dinner standing at the counter, scrolling through Netflix on her laptop without actually watching anything. Her mind kept drifting back to those letters. To him. To number 47293. She wondered if he hated her for ghosting him. If he thought about her at all. If the letters had meant to him what they'd meant to her. Probably not. He was serving 20 years. He probably had a dozen other pen pals by now. A dozen other women pouring their hearts out to a stranger who... Someone knocked on her door. Anita froze, fork halfway to her mouth. It was almost 8 at night. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her aunt always called first. Her coworkers didn't even know where she lived. The knock came again, firmer this time, deliberate. She set down her food and walked to the door, peering through the peephole. A man stood in the hallway, tall, lean, wearing an expensive-looking black suit despite the rain. Dark hair, sharp features. He was looking right at the peephole, like he knew she was watching. Anita Baptiste? His voice was accented, Korean, and somehow familiar in a way that made her skin prickle. "Who are you?" she called through the door. "Open the door and I'll tell you." "I'm calling the police." "No, you're not." He pulled something from his pocket, a letter. Even through the peephole, she recognized the lined prison stationery, her handwriting. "Because then you'd have to explain why you've been writing love letters to a convicted felon for 2 years. Anita's blood went cold. No. No, 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 no. "Open the door, Naomi." The way he said her fake name made it sound like a threat and a prayer at the same time. "We need to talk about the promises you made me." Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely turn the deadbolt. She opened the door 6 inches, keeping the chain lock engaged, and looked at the man who'd been living in her head for 2 years. Park Tae-young smiled. It was the kind of smile sharks gave right before they bit. "Hello, Naomi," he said softly. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." And Anita realized, finally, terribly, that she'd made a catastrophic mistake. She'd invited a monster into her soul. And now he was standing at her door, ready to collect what she'd promised him. "You can't be real." Anita's voice came out as a whisper, her eyes locked on the man in her hallway. "You're supposed to be in prison for 18 more years." Conviction overturned. Tae-young held up the letter between 2 fingers like evidence. "Prosecutorial misconduct. Illegal wiretaps. The case fell apart 3 months ago. I've been free for 67 days. He tilted his head slightly. "You would have known that if you'd kept writing. How did you find me?" "You're not as anonymous as you thought." His eyes, dark, intense, unreadable, scanned her face like he was memorizing every detail. "The prison pen pal program has security holes. Your letters were postmarked from Seattle. You mentioned working at a library. You talked about your Jamaican mother who made curry goat on Sundays." He paused. "It took me 48 hours to narrow it down to you." Anita's heart hammered against her ribs. "What do you want?" "May I come in? We have a lot to discuss, and I'd rather not do it in the hallway." "Absolutely not." Tae-young looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I understand. You're frightened. That's smart. But Anita, and yes, I know your real name now. I didn't fly 3,000 miles to hurt you. I came because you owe me an explanation. I don't owe you anything. You wrote me 214 letters. His voice dropped lower, intimate and dangerous. You told me things you've never told anyone. You made promises. I made promises to a pen pal I thought would be in prison for 2 decades. Anita's fear was being overtaken by anger now. This was supposed to be safe. It was supposed to be therapy. Taeyang's smile turned bitter. Yes, you mentioned that in your second letter. You were using me to process your grief. I was a convenient void to scream into. He stepped closer to the door, and Anita instinctively moved back. But somewhere around letter 47, it stopped being therapy, didn't it? You stopped writing about your dead mother and started writing about us. There is no us. Letter 93. You wrote, "Sometimes I imagine what it would be like to wake up next to someone who actually sees me. Not the polite librarian or the dutiful daughter, but the messy, angry, scared version of me that only exists in these letters. Would they stay, or would they run?" Taeyang recited it from memory, his eyes never leaving hers. You were talking about me, Naomi. You were imagining waking up next to me. Anita's breath caught. She had written that. Late at night, wine-drunk and lonely, she'd written exactly that. That was a fantasy, she said, but her voice wavered. That wasn't real. It was real enough that you stopped writing when it scared you. He lowered the letter. It was real enough that you've been thinking about me every day for 6 months, wondering if I hate you for disappearing. How did you? Because I've been thinking about you every day for 6 months, wondering what I did to make you run. His voice softened just slightly. You asked if I would stay or run. The answer is stay. Anita, I would stay. I flew across the country because I'm staying. This was insane. This was a stranger, a convicted criminal, standing in her hallway, quoting her own vulnerable words back at her, looking at her like he knew her. And the worst part? The absolutely terrifying part? Some broken piece of her wanted to let him in. You need to leave, Anita said, forcing steel into her voice. Right now, or I'm calling the police and telling them my stalker found me. Your stalker, Taeyang laughed, sharp and humorless. Is that what I am? Not the man you poured your heart out to? Not the man you told your deepest secrets? Just a stalker? You're a criminal who tracked down a woman who wanted nothing to do with him. Yes, that's exactly what you are. Something flickered across his face, hurt maybe, or anger. It was gone too fast to tell. Fine. He tucked the letter back into his jacket. I'll leave. But first, answer one question honestly, and I'll walk away and never contact you again. Anita hesitated. What question? Did you mean it? Taeyang's eyes locked onto hers, intense and searching. In letter 147, you wrote, I think I could love you. Not the idea of you or the safety of loving someone I can't have, but actually you. The broken, dangerous, impossible you. Did you mean it, or was that just pretty words to pass the time? Anita's throat went tight. She remembered writing that letter, remembered crying while she wrote it because she'd finally admitted the truth to herself. She had fallen for him, for a man she'd never met. For words on paper that felt more real than any conversation she'd had in years. It doesn't matter what I meant, she whispered. Because this, she gestured between them, this can't exist outside those letters. Why not? Because you're a stranger. Because I don't know anything about you except what you chose to tell me in controlled, edited letters. Because real relationships require more than vulnerability. They require safety and trust and what we have isn't real. Taeyang's voice turned hard. Those letters weren't real? The way you saw me, the way I saw you, that wasn't real? No, it was real, but it was safe. Don't you understand? Real life isn't safe. You showing up here proves that. Safe. He repeated the word like a curse. You want safe? Then tell me the truth. Did you know who your father is? What he did? Anita blinked, thrown by the sudden change in subject. What does my father have to do with this? Everything. Taeyang's smile was cold now, all warmth gone. Did you know Devin Baptiste owes my organization $500,000 from a smuggling deal that went bad 3 years ago? The world tilted sideways. What? Did you know that when you signed up for that prison pen pal program, your father saw it as an opportunity? That he knew exactly who inmate number 47293 was? That he let you write those letters, encouraged you probably, because he thought if I fell in love with you, he could use it to negotiate his debt away? No. Anita shook her head, backing away from the door. No, that's not... My father wouldn't. Your father set you up, Anita. Taeyang's voice was brutal in its honesty. Every letter you wrote, every secret you shared, every promise you made, it was all part of his plan to save his own ass. You were bait. You're lying. Am I? He pulled out his phone, showed her a photograph of her father shaking hands with 3 Korean men in front of a shipping container. This was taken in Busan 3 years ago. That's Devin Baptiste making a deal to smuggle counterfeit electronics through my family's territory without permission. When the shipment got seized by customs, he owed us. When I got arrested 6 months later, he thought the debt died with my freedom. Anita stared at the photo, her mind reeling. Her father had been in South Korea 3 years ago. He'd come back broke and desperate. He'd told her it was a business opportunity that fell through. He'd lied. And when you signed up for that pen pal program, Taeyang continued, when you got matched with me by pure coincidence, Devin saw his chance. He knew I'd never hurt the daughter of a debtor, not if I cared about her. So he let you write, let you build a connection with me, let you become the leverage he needed. If this is true, Anita said, her voice shaking, if my father really did this, then you being here, you coming to my apartment, it's not about the letters at all, is it? It's about collecting his debt. Taeyang was quiet for a long moment. Yes, he said finally. And no. Which is it? I came to Seattle for 2 reasons, Anita. First, to settle accounts with your father. Second, because despite knowing he set this whole thing up, despite knowing you might have been part of the con, I still needed to see you. I needed to look you in the eyes and know if what we wrote to each other was real or just another lie in a life full of lies. And what do you see? The question came out barely above a whisper. Taeyang studied her, really looked at her, like he was reading a letter written on her face. I see a woman who didn't know, he said quietly. I see someone who's just as betrayed as I am. And I see fear. You're terrified of me. Shouldn't I be? You're a criminal standing at my door talking about debts and organizations like you're in the mafia. I am in the mafia, Naomi. He said her fake name deliberately, watching her flinch. I'm the head of the Busan faction. I control shipping routes, protection rackets, and underground markets across 3 countries. I've killed men. I've ordered deaths. I'm not a good person. Then why are you telling me this? Because you asked me once, in letter 74, if I believed in honesty even when it hurts. I said yes. So here's the painful truth. I'm not here to rescue you or romance you or be the man from the letters. I'm here because your father owes me $500,000 and I'm going to collect. But I'm also here because for 2 years, your letters were the only thing that made me feel human. And I need to know if that was real before I decide what to do with you. What to do with me? Anita's fear crystallized into something sharper. I'm not currency. I'm not part of my father's debt. Aren't you? He used you as collateral. That makes you part of the equation. No, Anita's voice turned hard. I'm not paying for his mistakes. I've spent my whole life cleaning up his messes, and I'm done. You want your money? Find him. But you leave me out of it. Taeyang smiled, slow and dangerous. What if I told you there's another way to settle this? What way? Marry me. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Anita laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. You're insane. Devin owes me $500,000 plus 3 years of interest. That's $670,000. He doesn't have it. He's in hiding because he knows I'll kill him if I find him. Taeyang's expression didn't change. But if you marry me, the debt transfers. You become family, and in my world, family debts are forgiven. That's not a marriage proposal. That's extortion. It's a business arrangement. You marry me, your father lives. You refuse. I find him and you'll be attending his funeral within a week. Anita's hands clenched into fists. And what do you get out of this business arrangement? Besides forgiving a debt you could just collect by murdering someone? I get Naomi. His voice dropped. The woman from the letters. The one who saw me as more than a criminal. The one who made promises about waking up next to someone who sees her. I get to find out if she's real or if she's just another beautiful lie. She's not real, Anita shouted. Naomi doesn't exist. She was a fantasy I created because I was lonely and broken and stupid enough to think writing to a prisoner was therapy instead of playing with fire. Then prove it. Taeyang stepped back from the door, giving her space. Prove she was just a fantasy. Marry me. Let me try to find her. And when I realize you're right, when I realize Naomi was just ink and paper, I'll give you an annulment and walk away. Your father lives. You go back to your safe little life. Everyone wins. Except I'd be legally bound to a mobster. For 6 months, then you're free. Anita stared at him, trying to find the angle, the trap. Why would you do this? Why offer me a way out at all? Because you asked me once if I believed people could change, if someone who'd done terrible things could become someone worth loving. Taeyang's expression softened, just for a moment. I said I didn't know, but I'd like to find out. And I can't do that if you're just another casualty of your father's choices. It was insane. All of it. This man, this stranger, was offering to forgive a debt that would save her father's life in exchange for a temporary marriage to a woman he'd only known through letters. I need time to think, Anita said. You have 24 hours. Taeyang pulled a business card from his pocket and slid it under the door. That's my number. Call me with your answer. If I don't hear from you by 8 p.m. tomorrow, I'll assume it's a no, and I'll proceed with collecting the debt the traditional way. By killing my father. Yes. Such a simple, honest answer. No threats, no dramatics, just yes. What if I go to the police, Anita asked? Tell them you're extorting me? You could, but then you'd have to explain the letters, and I'd have to produce the evidence of your father's crimes. He'd go to prison, I'd get deported. And you'd still have to live with the guilt of destroying what's left of your family. Taeyang turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Anita, I hope you say yes. Not because of the debt, but because I think we both deserve to know if what we wrote to each other was real. He walked away then, disappearing down the hallway like a ghost that had momentarily taken human form. Anita stood frozen in her doorway for a long moment before finally closing and locking the door. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. Her entire world had just been turned upside down by a man who quoted her own letters back at her and threatened her father's life in the same breath. She looked down at the business card he'd slid under the door. Park Tae-yong. Private number. No company name, no title, just a name and a number. Anita picked it up, carried it to her kitchen counter, and stared at it for a long time. Then she turned on her phone. 17 missed calls from her father, 34 text messages, the most recent one sent 10 minutes ago. Baby girl, if a Korean man comes looking for you, do not trust him. Do not let him in. He's dangerous. I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to get involved. Please call me. I can explain everything. Too late, Dad, Anita thought bitterly. Way too late. She opened her contacts, found her father's number, and pressed call. He answered on the first ring. Anita, thank God, are you okay? Did he find you? Yeah, Dad, he found me. Her voice was cold, emotionless. Park Tae-yong, head of the Busan faction, the man I've been writing letters to for 2 years without knowing who he was. He found me. Silence on the other end. Then, "Baby girl, I can explain. Did you know?" Anita cut him off. "When I signed up for that pen pal program, when I got matched with inmate num 47293, did you know it was him?" More silence. That was answer enough. "How could you?" Her voice broke. "How could you use me like that? Those letters were private. They were mine. And you turned them into collateral for your debt?" "I was desperate." Devin's voice cracked. "These people, they were going to kill me, Anita. I thought if you developed a connection with him, if he cared about you, maybe I could negotiate. Maybe I could use that to save yourself." Anita laughed, bitter and broken. "You sacrificed me to save yourself. I never thought you'd actually fall for him. I never thought it would go this far. It was supposed to be a few letters, a connection I could leverage, and then he'd forgive the debt and everyone would move on." "Well, congratulations, Dad. Your plan worked. He's offering to forgive your debt." Anita stared at Taeyong's business card. "All I have to do is marry him." "What? No! Anita, you can't. Why not? You already sold me to him. Might as well make it legal." "Baby girl, please listen to me. These people are dangerous. Park Taeyong is not the man from those letters. He's a killer. He's more honest than you've ever been." Anita hung up. She sat in her kitchen for a long time, staring at that business card, thinking about letters and lies and the difference between safety and love. Then she picked up her phone and dialed the number. Taeyong answered immediately. "Anita, I have conditions," she said. "I'm listening. 6 months, not a day longer. After that, annulment. No strings, no complications." "Agreed." "My father lives. No matter what happens between us, you don't touch him. As long as you honor the arrangement, he's safe. And I want the truth, all of it. No more secrets, no more manipulation. If we're doing this, we do it honestly." A pause. Then, "That's a dangerous condition. The truth isn't always kind." "I don't care. I'm done with lies." "Very well. Honesty. Even when it hurts." Anita closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and jumped. "Then I'll marry you. I'll pick you up tomorrow at noon. Bring what you need for a few days. We're going to Vancouver to make this legal. Washington has a 3-day waiting period for marriage licenses, but British Columbia doesn't. You've already planned this." "I'm a strategist, Naomi. I plan everything." "Don't call me that." "Why not? It's who you were when you fell in love with me." "I didn't—" Anita stopped. Because she had. She'd fallen in love with inmate number 47293 through those letters, even though she'd never admitted it out loud. Naomi was a fantasy. Then let's see if reality can compete. Taeyong's voice was soft, almost gentle. "See you tomorrow, Anita." He hung up before she could respond. Anita sat alone in her kitchen, staring at her phone, and wondered if she'd just made the best or worst decision of her life. Outside, the rain kept falling, and somewhere in the city, Park Taeyang looked at the last letter she'd ever sent him and smiled. "This can't be more than what it is." "We'll see about that, Naomi," he whispered to the Seattle skyline. "We'll see." Park Taeyang's hotel suite overlooked Elliott Bay, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist luxury. He stood at the window now, watching the rain turn the water into hammered steel, his phone pressed to his ear. "She said yes," he told Minjun. "Already? Boss, that was fast. You sure she's not playing an angle?" "If she is, I'll find out soon enough." Taeyong loosened his tie, rolling his shoulders to release the tension that had been building since he'd knocked on Anita's door. "What's the status on Devin Baptiste?" "Still in the wind, but I've got people watching his known associates. He'll surface eventually, they always do." "Let him run. As long as Anita honors the arrangement, he's irrelevant." "You really going through with this? Marrying some girl just because she wrote you pretty letters?" Taeyong was quiet for a long moment, thinking about 214 letters, about vulnerability and honesty, and the way Anita's words had made him feel human again when he'd forgotten what that felt like. She wasn't just some girl, Minjun. She was the only person in 2 years who saw me as more than the king of Busan. She saw Park Tae-young, the man I was before all of this. And if she's lying, if she was part of her father's con all along, then I'll have my answer about whether people can change. Either way, I win. Minjun sighed. You're going to get your heart broken, boss. Probably. Tae-young smiled, sharp and dangerous. But at least I'll feel something. That's more than I've had in years. After hanging up, Tae-young pulled out the last letter again. He'd read it so many times the creases were starting to tear. I think I could love you. Not the idea of you or the safety of loving someone I can't have, but actually you. Tomorrow, he'd find out if she'd meant it. Tomorrow, he'd marry a woman who'd seen his soul through prison bars and liked what she found. Tomorrow, the fantasy would either become real or shatter completely. Tae-young touched the dragon tattoo on his left arm, the one that coiled from wrist to shoulder, intricate scales and fierce eyes. He'd gotten it at 18, the day he'd joined his family's organization, a permanent reminder of who he was, what he'd chosen. But Anita's letters had made him wonder if that choice was permanent after all. Let's find out who I am now, Naomi, he said to the rain-streaked window. Let's find out if you were right about me. Anita didn't sleep that night. She lay in her bed, the bed that doubled as a couch, in the studio apartment that had been her safe haven for 3 years, and stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had just happened. Her father had used her as bait. A mafia boss had tracked her down, and she'd agreed to marry him. It was insane. All of it. But what choice did she have? Let her father die? That same father who'd abandoned her mother, who'd gambled away their savings, who'd lied and manipulated his way through life? Part of her, the angry, hurt part, wanted to say yes. Let him face the consequences of his choices. But she couldn't. Despite everything, despite all the pain he'd caused, Devin Baptiste was still her father, and she couldn't live with his blood on her hands. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Noon tomorrow. Pack light. We'll be gone 3 days. Tae-young. 3 days. In 3 days, she'd be married to a man she'd only met once. Anita got out of bed, went to her closet, and pulled out a small suitcase. What did you pack for a shotgun wedding to a Korean mobster? Business casual? Something formal? Armor? She settled on practical. Jeans, sweaters, one nice dress in case they needed to look respectable for the marriage license. Toiletries. Her passport. Thank God she'd renewed it last year when she'd briefly fantasized about traveling to Jamaica to see her mother's family. At the bottom of her nightstand drawer, buried under old birthday cards and forgotten jewelry, she found the box where she'd kept all of Tae-young's letters. 214 letters. 2 years of correspondence, the entire history of their relationship, if you could even call it that. Anita pulled out a letter at random. Number 86, from about a year ago. Naomi. You asked if I have regrets. The honest answer is, too many to count. But the biggest one is this. I regret not meeting you before I became who I am now. I regret that you're getting the broken, dangerous version of me instead of the man I could have been. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we don't get the people we deserve. We get the people who see us as we are and choose us anyway. Would you choose me, Naomi? If you saw all of me, the violence, the blood, the choices that can't be undone, would you still choose me? I think about that question more than I should. Number 47293. She'd answered him in her next letter. She'd said yes. She'd said she believed people were more than their worst moments, and now she was about to find out if she'd been telling the truth or just writing beautiful lies. Anita packed the box of letters in her suitcase. If she was going to marry this man, she wanted to remember who he'd been on paper. The version of Park Tae-young who'd been honest about his brokenness, who'd seen her clearly even from behind bars. She just hoped that version was real. At exactly noon the next day, a black SUV pulled up in front of Anita's apartment building. She'd been watching from her window for 20 minutes, her packed suitcase by the door, her hands shaking with nerves and adrenaline, and something that might have been anticipation. Tae-young stepped out of the SUV, same expensive suit, same sharp features, same dangerous elegance. But in the daylight, she could see details she'd missed last night. The way his jaw tightened when he scanned the street for threats, the controlled precision of his movements, the tattoos that peeked out from his collar and cuffs. He looked up at her window and their eyes met. Even from 3 stories up, she felt the impact of that gaze. Anita grabbed her suitcase and headed downstairs before she could change her mind. When she pushed through the building's front door, Tae-young was waiting, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. "You came," he said. "I gave you my word." "People break their word all the time." "I'm not people." Anita met his eyes, refusing to look away. "And apparently, neither are you." A smile flickered across his face, brief, genuine. "True." He reached for her suitcase. "May I? I can carry my own bag." "I'm sure you can, but let me do this one thing that's normal. That's not about debts or threats or manipulation." His hand hovered near the suitcase handle, waiting for permission. "Please." It was such a small thing, but the please did something to her defenses. Anita released the suitcase. "Okay." Tae-young took it, gesturing to the SUV where Minjun stood by the open back door. "This is Choi Minjun, my second. He'll be driving us to Vancouver." Minjun nodded, a curt, professional acknowledgement. His eyes swept over Anita with the practiced assessment of someone trained to identify threats. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him, because he simply said, "Ma'am," and held the door. Anita slid into the back seat. Tae-young followed, settling beside her with careful distance between them. The SUV pulled away from her building, and Anita watched her neighborhood disappear through the tinted windows. The coffee shop where she got her morning latte, the bookstore where she spent too much of her paycheck, the library where she'd worked for 5 years, her life, her safe, predictable, lonely life. And she was leaving it all behind to marry a man she'd only known through letters. "Second thoughts?" Tae-young asked quietly. "About 1,000. Anita turned to look at him. "You?" "Not one." "How can you be so sure? You don't actually know me. Those letters, they were pieces of me, but not the whole truth." "I know enough." Tae-young's gaze was steady, intense. "I know you're brave enough to write brutal honesty to a stranger. I know you're loyal enough to save a father who doesn't deserve it. I know you're smart enough to be terrified of me, but here anyway." He paused. "That's more than most marriages start with. Most marriages aren't business arrangements to settle mafia debts." "True." The corner of his mouth lifted. "But most marriages are built on prettier lies. At least ours is built on ugly truth." Anita couldn't argue with that. They drove in silence for a while, heading north on I-5 toward the Canadian border. The rain had finally stopped, leaving Seattle scrubbed clean and gleaming under weak afternoon sun. "Can I ask you something?" Anita said finally. "Anything." "Why did you write back? That first letter I sent? It was just grief and anger and a stranger's pain. You could have ignored it. Why didn't you?" Tae-young was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the passing scenery. "Because it was the first honest thing anyone had said to me in years," he said finally. "In prison, everyone lies. They lie about their crimes, their past, their plans for the future. Guards lie about caring. Inmates lie about loyalty. Everything is strategy and survival." He turned to look at her. "And then your letter arrived. No strategy, no agenda, just raw, painful honesty. I forgot what that felt like. So I was... what? A reminder of a world you'd left behind? You were proof that world still existed, that there were still people who could be vulnerable without it being a weakness to exploit." His voice dropped. You were proof I wasn't completely lost. Anita's throat tightened. This was the man from the letters, the one who'd written about regret and change and the weight of bad choices. Are you? She asked. Lost? Taeyang smiled, sad and knowing. Probably, but I'm hoping you can help me find my way back. I'm not a map, Taeyang. I'm not your redemption. I know, but maybe you can be a reason to try. The border crossing went smoothly. Taeyang had the kind of documents that didn't get questioned, and Minjun had the kind of expression that discouraged conversation. By 4 p.m., they were in Vancouver, pulling up to a boutique hotel in Yaletown, all glass and steel and modern luxury. We'll get the license tomorrow, Taeyang explained as they stepped into the lobby. Ceremony the day after, then back to Seattle. And then what? Anita asked. Then we figure out if Naomi was real or not. A concierge appeared, impeccably dressed, professionally invisible. Mr. Park, welcome back. Your suite is ready. Thank you. We'll also need a second room, adjoining if possible. The concierge's expression didn't flicker. Of course, sir. Anita waited until they were alone in the elevator before asking, Separate rooms? Did you think I'd force you to share a bed? Taeyang's tone was dry. This is a business arrangement, remember? You get your own space, your own privacy. Oh, she felt foolish for the spike of... What? Disappointment? Relief? She couldn't tell. Thank you. Don't thank me for basic decency, Anita. The elevator opened onto the penthouse floor. 1 hallway, 2 doors. Their rooms. Taeyang opened the first door, revealing a stunning suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking False Creek. Modern furniture, king-sized bed, marble bathroom visible through an open door. This is yours, he said, setting her suitcase inside. The adjoining door connects to my room. It locks from your side. Use it whenever you want or don't. Your choice. Anita stepped into the room, overwhelmed by the luxury. This suite probably cost more per night than she made in a week. Why are you being so... nice? She turned to face him. Last night you were threatening my father's life. Today you're giving me my own room and respecting my boundaries. Which version is real? Taeyang leaned against the doorframe, considering the question. Both, he said finally. I'm capable of violence and courtesy, threats and gentleness. I told you, I'm not a good person, but I'm trying to be a better one, at least with you. Why with me? Because you asked me if I thought people could change, and I want to prove that the answer is yes. He straightened. Get settled. We'll have dinner at 7. There's a restaurant downstairs. He started to leave, then paused. Anita, thank you for coming. I know this is terrifying. I know you have every reason to hate me, but I'm glad you're here. He closed the door before she could respond. Anita stood alone in the beautiful, expensive room and tried to remember how to breathe. Dinner was surprisingly normal. They sat in the hotel's rooftop restaurant, all ambient lighting and panoramic views, and Taeyang ordered wine like this was a real date instead of the prelude to a marriage of convenience. Tell me about the library, he said after the wine arrived. Why did you choose that? Anita blinked, thrown by the mundane question. Why do you care? Because I know Library Anita from your letters. I want to know real Anita, too. She took a sip of wine, something red and expensive that she couldn't properly appreciate, and thought about how to answer. I chose the library because it was safe, she said finally. After my mom died, I couldn't handle anything with too much chaos or emotion. Books were predictable, quiet. They couldn't hurt me. You were hiding. I was surviving. She met his eyes. There's a difference. Is there? Taeyang swirled his wine. Or is survival just a prettier word for cowardice? Says the man who built an empire on violence. Exactly. I chose violence over vulnerability. You chose books over people. We're both hiding, Anita, just in different ways. She wanted to argue, but he was right. She had been hiding, for years. What were you like before? She asked. Before the mafia? Before prison? Who was Park Tae-yang at 18? His expression shifted, something vulnerable and painful flickering across his features before the mask returned. Ambitious, angry, desperate to prove I was more than my father's failure of a son. He took a drink. My father was a fisherman who died in debt. My mother worked herself to exhaustion trying to keep his restaurant afloat. I watched her break herself for a man who'd made bad choices, and I swore I'd never be weak like that. So you chose power. I chose control over my life, my choices, my destiny. The mafia offered that. It offered belonging and purpose and a way to protect the people I loved. And did it work? Did you protect them? Tae-young's jaw tightened. My mother died 6 months after I took over the Busan faction. Heart attack from stress. She spent her whole life worried about me, and that worry killed her. He set down his glass carefully. So no, I didn't protect anyone. I just became the thing that destroyed the people who loved me. Anita's heart twisted. This was the pain behind his letters, the guilt he'd hinted at but never fully explained. She wouldn't want you to blame yourself, Anita said softly. How would you know? Because she was a mother, and mothers love their children even when they make terrible choices. Mine did. Anita's voice wavered. Right up until cancer took her. They sat in that shared grief for a moment. Two people who'd lost their mothers, who carried that weight every day. Would they approve of this? Tae-young asked quietly. Our mothers. Would they approve of us marrying for all the wrong reasons? Anita laughed, sad and honest. No. My mother would tell me I'm making a mistake, that I should let my father face his consequences. And yet you're here. And yet I'm here. She met his eyes. What about yours? My mother would say I'm trying to buy absolution with a woman's freedom. She'd be right. Tae-yang's smile was bitter. But she'd also say I deserve one chance at happiness. So maybe she'd understand. Their food arrived, beautifully plated, probably delicious, but Anita barely tasted it. She was too busy watching Tae-young, trying to reconcile the dangerous man from last night with the vulnerable one sitting across from her now. Can I ask you something? Tae-young said between courses. Yes. In letter 162, you wrote about a recurring dream where you were drowning. You said you couldn't scream, couldn't fight, could only sink. Do you still have that dream? Anita's breath caught. She'd forgotten she'd written that. Yes, almost every night. What happens in the dream? You never told me the ending. Because there is no ending. I just keep sinking until I wake up. Tae-young was quiet for a moment. Then, in my version of that dream, I find you. I dive down and pull you up before the water fills your lungs. We break the surface together, gasping and alive. That's not how my dream works. Maybe it could be. Maybe we can rewrite the endings together. It was such a beautiful, impossible thing to say, and Anita wanted so badly to believe it could be true. Don't make promises you can't keep, she whispered. I've never broken a promise to you, Naomi. I don't plan to start now. That name again, the one that felt like a secret between them. I'm not Naomi, Anita said. She was who I wanted to be, brave and honest and unafraid, but that's not who I really am. Isn't it? Tae-young reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers, not quite touching. You flew to another country to marry a dangerous man to save your father. That's brave. You demanded honesty even when it hurts. That's honest. And you're sitting here with me despite being terrified. That's unafraid. I'm very afraid. Being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means being afraid and doing it anyway. His hand was still hovering near hers. Anita looked at it, scarred knuckles, long fingers, that silver dragon ring glinting in the candlelight. She remembered how his handwriting had looked on those letters, precise, controlled, but with moments of pressure where he'd pressed too hard, revealing emotion he tried to hide, Slowly, carefully, she reached out and let her hand rest against his. Taeyong's breath hitched, barely audible, but she heard it. "This doesn't mean I trust you," Anita said. "I know. And it doesn't mean I've forgiven you for threatening my father. I know that too. So what does it mean?" Taeyong's fingers curled around hers, gentle but sure. "It means we're trying, both of us." They stayed like that through dessert, hands linked across the table, wine glasses forgotten, pretending for one evening that this was a real first date instead of the prelude to a marriage built on debt and desperation. And for just a moment, Anita let herself believe the fantasy. At midnight, Anita stood at the window of her hotel room, watching Vancouver's lights reflect off False Creek, and tried to process the fact that tomorrow she'd get a marriage license. Tomorrow, she'd legally bind herself to Park Tae-young. Tomorrow, the fantasy would become paperwork. A knock came from the adjoining door, soft, tentative. "Anita, are you awake?" She unlocked the door and opened it. Tae-young stood there in dark pajama pants and a white t-shirt that revealed the full extent of his tattoos, dragons coiling up both arms, disappearing under the sleeves, probably covering more of his torso than she could see. He looked younger like this, less dangerous, almost vulnerable. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Old habit. In prison, you don't sleep deeply." He hesitated. "I heard you pacing. Thought you might want company, or want me to leave you alone. I wasn't sure which." Anita should have told him to go, should have maintained boundaries. Instead, she stepped aside. "Come in." Tae-young entered, hands in his pockets, careful not to intrude too far into her space. He glanced at the suitcase she'd left open on the chair, and stopped. "You brought the letters." Anita followed his gaze. The box was visible, lid slightly open, revealing the stack of envelopes inside. "I wanted to remember," she admitted, "who you were on paper, in case the real you was too different. And, am I different? Yes and no." Anita sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. "The man in those letters was honest about being broken. The man in my apartment last night was harder, colder. That was the King of Busan. What you're getting now is Park Tae-young." He stayed by the window, maintaining distance. "They're both me, both real." "Which one am I marrying?" "Both. You don't get one without the other." Anita pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. "I'm scared, Tae-young. Not of you. Well, maybe a little of you, but of this. Of getting it wrong. Of hurting you. Or being hurt." "Good. Fear means you're paying attention." He moved closer, sitting in the chair by her suitcase, deliberately not crowding her on the bed. "Can I tell you a secret?" "Please." "I'm terrified too. I've killed men without hesitation. I've made decisions that cost lives. But the thought of disappointing you, of being the monster you're afraid I might be, that scares me more than anything." "Why?" "Because your opinion matters. Because somewhere in 214 letters, you became the voice in my head that asks if I'm being the man I want to be or the man I settled for." He leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes locked on hers. "You made me want to be better, Anita. Even if I fail, I want to try." "What if trying isn't enough?" "Then at least we tried together." God, she wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that two broken people could somehow piece each other back together. "What happens after 6 months?" Anita asked. "If we do this, if we try and it doesn't work, do we just walk away?" "That's the agreement. 6 months, then you're free." "And if it does work? If Naomi turns out to be real after all?" Tae-young smiled, soft, hopeful, dangerous. "Then we rewrite the agreement, together." Anita looked at him, really looked. At the tattoos that marked his choices, at the scars that marked his survival, at the eyes that had seen violence and grief, and somehow still held hope. This man was a stranger, and not a stranger, known and unknown. The words on the page made flesh. "Stay," she heard herself say. Tae-young went very still. "What?" "Stay. Tonight. Not—" She felt her face heat. "Not like that. Just stay. I don't want to be alone with my thoughts." "Are you sure?" "No, but do it anyway." He stood slowly, moved to the other side of the bed, and lay down on top of the covers, fully clothed, carefully distant, but present. Anita turned off the bedside lamp and lay down too, hyper-aware of his breathing in the darkness. "Tae-young?" "Yes?" "In your version of my drowning dream, when you pull me up, what happens next?" She heard him shift, could feel his attention even though she couldn't see his face. "We swim to shore," he said quietly, "and we lie on the beach, gasping and laughing because we survived, and then we decide whether to jump back in or stay safe on land. Which do we choose? I don't know. The dream always ends before we decide." Anita smiled in the darkness. "Maybe tomorrow we'll find out." Maybe. They lay in silence for a while, listening to each other breathe, two strangers who'd known each other's souls before their faces. And somehow, impossibly, Anita felt safe. Not because Tae-young wasn't dangerous, he absolutely was, but because for the first time in years, she wasn't facing her fear alone. "Good night, Naomi," Tae-young whispered. "Good night, number 47293. She fell asleep before she heard him whisper, "Sweet dreams, no drowning tonight." Anita woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the disorienting realization that she wasn't alone. Tae-young sat in the chair by the window, already dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, reading something on his phone. His hair was still wet from the shower, and he'd rolled his sleeves up, revealing the full dragon tattoo on his left forearm, intricate scales, fierce eyes, smoke curling from its nostrils. He looked up when she stirred. "Good morning." "You stayed." The words came out rougher than she intended, thick with sleep. "You asked me to." He set down his phone. "How did you sleep?" Anita thought about it. "Better than I have in months. No drowning dream." Something softened in his expression. "Good." The intimacy of the moment hit her, waking up in the same room as this man, this stranger she was about to marry. It should have felt wrong, dangerous. Instead, it felt almost natural. "What time is it?" she asked, sitting up and running a hand through her sleep-mussed twists. 9:30. We have an appointment at the marriage license office at 11. He stood, crossing to set a coffee cup on her nightstand. "I had room service bring this up. Black, 1 sugar. That's how you take it, right? You mentioned it in letter 47. He'd remembered. From a letter written over a year ago, he'd remembered how she took her coffee. "Thank you," Anita said, taking the cup, its warmth seeping into her palms. "I'll let you get ready. Take your time." Tae-young headed toward the adjoining door, then paused. "Anita, last night, thank you for letting me stay. It meant more than you know." He disappeared into his room before she could respond. Anita sat with her coffee, staring at the closed door, and wondered how she'd gotten here, to a luxury hotel room in Vancouver, about to marry a Korean mafia boss who remembered how she took her coffee. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. "Baby girl, please reconsider. You don't have to do this. I'll figure something else out. Don't sacrifice yourself for me." Anita stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. "You should have thought about that before you used me as bait. See you at the wedding, or don't. I don't care anymore." She hit send before guilt could stop her. The marriage license office was bureaucratic and impersonal. Fluorescent lights, plastic chairs, forms to fill out in triplicate. Tae-young handled it with the same controlled efficiency he seemed to apply to everything, his answers calm and precise. Full legal name? Park Tae-yang. Date of birth? March 15th, 1988. Occupation? A pause, then. Import-export consultant. The clerk didn't even blink. When it was Anita's turn, her hands shook, filling out the forms. This was real. This was happening. In 2 days, she'd be Mrs. Park Tae-yang. Previous marriages? The clerk asked. None, Anita said. And you, Mr. Park? None. Anita glanced at him, surprised. She'd assumed a man like him would have a complicated romantic past. That's it, the clerk said, stamping their forms. You can pick up the license tomorrow after the 24-hour waiting period. Congratulations. They walked out into weak Vancouver sunshine, marriage license application in hand. You've never been married, Anita said. It wasn't a question. No. Why not? You're 38. Successful. I'd think what? That women would line up to marry a criminal? Tae-yang's smile was dry. They do. But they want the king of Busan. The power, the money, the status. No one wanted Park Tae-yang. I did. In the letters. He stopped walking, turning to face her on the sidewalk. People flowed around them. Tourists, business people, couples holding hands. You did, he agreed softly. You wanted the broken parts, the honest parts, the parts I kept hidden from everyone else. He reached out, tucking a loose twist behind her ear in a gesture so gentle it made her throat tight. That's why I'm here, Anita. That's why I tracked you down, because you saw me and you stayed anyway. I'm not staying. This is 6 months. 6 months is longer than anyone else has lasted. His hand dropped, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. I'll take what I can get. They spent the rest of the day like tourists, wandering Granville Island, eating overpriced pastries, pretending this was a real honeymoon instead of a transaction. And somewhere in the pretending, Anita started to forget she was supposed to be afraid. That evening, back at the hotel, Tae-young knocked on the adjoining door again. Come in, Anita called. She was sitting cross-legged on the bed, her laptop open, scrolling through emails from the library. He entered carrying a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. I thought we could talk, really talk. You said you wanted honesty. I did. Anita closed the laptop. Okay. Ask me anything. Tae-young poured the wine, handed her a glass, and settled into his usual chair by the window. Why did you really sign up for the pen pal program? And don't say therapy. That's what you told yourself. I want the real reason. Anita took a sip of wine, buying time. Because I was lonely, because I wanted to feel connected to someone without the risk of them leaving. Everyone I loved had left, my mom to death, my dad to his mistakes. Writing to someone who couldn't leave felt safe. And when it stopped feeling safe, when I said I wanted to find you, I panicked, because it meant you were real, not just words on paper I could control. She met his eyes. I couldn't control you. And control matters to you. Doesn't it matter to you? You run a criminal organization. That's all about control. True. Tae-yang swirled his wine. But I learned the hard way that the things worth having can't be controlled. My mother, I tried to control her safety, her happiness. She died anyway. Love, loyalty, trust, you can't force those. You can only hope they're freely given. Is that what you want from me? Love? He was quiet for a long moment. I want the chance to earn it. There's a difference. Anita's heart did something complicated in her chest. My turn to ask. What happened with your father? You said he died in debt. How? Tae-young's expression darkened. Gambling. Loan sharks. He borrowed money to keep his fishing boat running, then borrowed more to pay back the first loans. The debt kept growing. When he couldn't pay, they beat him. He had a stroke 3 days later and died in the hospital. His voice was flat, emotionless. I was 16. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me never to owe anyone anything, never to be weak enough that desperation makes you stupid. He took a long drink. And yet here I am, desperate enough to fly across the world for a woman who might not even exist outside letters. She exists, Anita found herself saying. She's just scared. Of me? Of wanting this to be real when it might all fall apart in 6 months. Taeyang leaned forward, elbows on knees. Then let's make a deal. For the next 6 months, we're honest. Brutally honest. No games, no manipulation. If you're scared, tell me. If I'm pushing too hard, tell me. We treat each other the way we did in those letters, with vulnerability instead of strategy. And if honesty breaks us, then at least we'll know it was real before it shattered. Anita considered this, turning the wine glass in her hands. Okay, brutal honesty, starting now. Starting now, he agreed. I'm attracted to you, Anita said, the words tumbling out before courage could fail. Physically, I have been since you showed up at my door, and that terrifies me because attraction clouds judgment. Taeyang went very still. I'm attracted to you too. I have been since I opened your first letter and imagined the woman brave enough to write it. And you're right, it does cloud judgment, but maybe some judgments are worth clouding. What does that mean? It means 6 months is a long time to pretend we don't want each other. He set down his wine glass carefully. I'm not asking you to sleep with me. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. But I am saying that if this is going to be real, if we're going to try, we should stop pretending the attraction doesn't exist. Heat flooded Anita's face. So what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we let it be complicated. We let ourselves want what we want without shame, but we don't act on it unless we both actively choose to. No pressure, no expectations, just honesty about what we're feeling. That's a terrible idea. It makes everything messier. Probably, but messy is real. Safe is a fantasy. God help her, he was right. Okay, Anita whispered. Complicated, messy, real. Real, Taeyang echoed. They sat in that charged silence for a while, the air between them thick with everything unsaid. One more honest thing, Taeyang said quietly. When I read your letters in prison, I used to imagine meeting you. I'd imagine walking into a room and seeing you for the first time. I'd imagine your voice, your laugh, the way you'd look at me when you realized I wasn't what you expected. And, am I what you expected? You're better, and worse, and more real than any fantasy could have been. He stood, moving toward the adjoining door. Get some rest. Tomorrow's a big day. Taeyang? He paused at the door. Will you stay again tonight? His shoulders relaxed slightly. If you want me to, I do. This time, when they lay in the darkness, the space between them felt different, charged with possibility, weighted with honesty. No drowning tonight, Taeyang whispered. No drowning, Anita agreed. And for the second night in a row, she slept without nightmares. They got married on a Thursday afternoon in a small chapel overlooking English Bay. Minjun served as witness, expressionless and efficient as always. The officiant was a pleasant Korean woman who spoke both English and Korean, allowing Taeyang to say his vows in his native language. Anita wore the one nice dress she'd packed, simple navy blue, hitting just above her knees. Taeyang wore a dark suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. They stood facing each other in the chapel, sunlight streaming through stained glass, and spoke words that felt both like lies and truth. Do you, Park Taeyang, take Anita Baptiste to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His eyes never left hers. Do you, Anita Baptiste, take Park Taeyang to be your lawfully wedded husband? Anita's throat was tight. This was it, the moment that would legally bind her to this dangerous, complicated man. I do, she whispered. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Taeyang stepped closer, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face gently, one hand on her cheek, thumb brushing her jawline, and kissed her. It was soft, careful, nothing like the passionate kisses in movies. It was a kiss that asked a question instead of demanding an answer. When he pulled back, his eyes searched hers. Okay? Anita nodded, not trusting her voice. They signed the marriage certificate. Minjun signed as witness. The officiant congratulated them with professional warmth. And just like that, Anita Baptiste became Anita Park. Mrs. Park Tae-yang, a mafia wife. They returned to Seattle the next morning, married, legal, bound. But instead of taking her to his home, Tae-yang drove her back to her apartment building in Ballard. I thought... Anita hesitated. I thought I'd be living with you. Isn't that how this works? Eventually, but I'm not going to force you to uproot your entire life in one day. He pulled up to the curb, turned off the engine. Pack what you need for a week. I'll give you time to process, to think. Then we'll figure out the living arrangements. You're giving me a choice? I'm giving you time. Choices come later. Minjun got out to give them privacy. Taeyang turned in his seat to face her. The hard part starts now, Anita. The debt is settled. Your father is safe as long as you honor our agreement. But now we have to figure out what this marriage actually means, what we are to each other. What if I can't? The fear leaked out despite her best efforts. What if I try and I just can't do this? Then we'll face that when it happens. But don't sabotage us before we've even started. He reached out, taking her hand. 6 months. Give me 6 months to prove that Naomi was real, that what we wrote to each other can exist outside prison walls and letter paper. Anita looked down at their joined hands, his scarred and strong, hers smaller but steadier than she felt. Okay, she said. 6 months. Taeyang lifted her hand, pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture that felt both old-fashioned and intimate. I'll call you tonight. We'll take this slow. Slow, she echoed, not quite believing him. But he kept his word. He let her go home, let her sleep in her own bed, let her breathe. And that night, he called. Tell me about your day, he said, like they were still just pen pals separated by prison walls. And Anita, despite everything, despite the terror and confusion and impossibility of it all, talked to him for 2 hours about library patrons and book recommendations and the rainstorm that had started up again. And it felt almost normal, almost like they were just two people getting to know each other, almost like this could work. The call came 3 days into her marriage. Anita was at work, shelving returns, when her phone vibrated with an unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Park. The voice was male, Korean accented, unfamiliar. My name is Kang Jae-sung. I work with your husband. He asked me to contact you about a matter concerning your father. Anita's blood went cold. What about him? He's been located. Mr. Park thought you might want to be present for the conversation. Where? Jae-sung gave her an address in Tacoma, an industrial area near the port. 1 hour. Come alone. He hung up before she could ask questions. Anita stared at her phone, heart racing. This was it. Whatever came next, confrontation, truth, violence, it started now. She told her supervisor she had a family emergency, grabbed her coat, and drove south with shaking hands. The address led to a warehouse, abandoned looking, surrounded by chain-link fence. Minjun stood outside, smoking a cigarette, looking like violence in a leather jacket. Mrs. Park, he greeted her, stamping out the cigarette. Boss is inside. Fair warning, it's not pretty. Anita's stomach churned. Is my father hurt? Not yet. But he might be, depending on how this conversation goes. Minjun opened the warehouse door. Inside was cavernous and cold. Concrete floors, exposed beams, the smell of rust and abandonment. And in the center, under a single hanging light, stood Tae-young. Her father was on his knees in front of him, hands zip-tied behind his back, face bruised and swollen. Dad! Anita ran forward, but Tae-young's hand shot out, stopping her. Don't! His voice was cold, the king of Busan voice, not the man who'd called her every night for the past 3 days. Not until we've had our conversation. What the hell is this? Anita yanked her arm free. You said he'd be safe. I married you. The debt is settled. The debt is settled, but the betrayal isn't. Taeyang's eyes were hard, emotionless. Your father has some explaining to do, and you deserve to hear it. Devin looked up at her, blood trailing from his split lip. Baby girl, I'm so sorry. I never meant— Tell her. Taeyang cut him off. Tell her everything. From the beginning. Devin's eyes filled with tears. I can't. Taeyang moved so fast Anita barely saw it. One moment standing, the next crouched beside Devin with a knife pressed to his throat. Tell her. Okay, Devin's voice cracked. 3 years ago, I made a deal in Busan. Counterfeit electronics. I was supposed to smuggle them through Park's territory into Seattle. Easy money. But customs seized the shipment. I lost everything. The investors, the Park family, they wanted their money back. $600,000. I know this part, Anita said coldly. Get to the part where you used me. Devin flinched. When Park got arrested by the FBI, I thought I was safe, thought the debt died with his freedom. But then 6 months later, you signed up for that stupid pen pal program, and you got matched with him. By coincidence, Anita whispered. Not coincidence. Taeyang's voice was deadly quiet. Tell her, Devin. Tell her what you did. Devin's tears spilled over. I bribed the program coordinator. Paid her $5,000 to match you specifically with inmate number 47293. I knew who he was. I knew if you developed a connection, I could use it. The warehouse seemed to tilt sideways. You— Anita couldn't breathe. You set me up from the start? I thought it would be a few letters. I thought maybe he'd care enough not to kill me. I never thought you'd actually fall for him. Devin was sobbing now. I never thought it would go this far. But you let it, Taeyang said, his knife still steady at Devin's throat. You saw the letters getting more intimate. Saw your daughter falling in love with a prisoner. And you said nothing. Did nothing. Let her pour her heart out to a stranger because it served your purposes. I was desperate. Devin looked at Anita pleading. They were going to kill me. What was I supposed to do? Not use your daughter as bait. Anita's voice broke. Not weaponize my grief. Not turn the one honest thing I had into another one of your cons. I'm sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry. Don't call me that. Anita's hands were shaking with rage. You don't get to call me that anymore. You gave up that right when you decided I was worth less than your debt. She turned to Taeyang. Did you know? When you showed up at my apartment, did you already know he'd set me up? Yes. The single word felt like a punch. Then why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to see if you were part of it. Taeyang stood, sheathing his knife. I needed to know if the letters were real or if you were playing me too. And what did you decide? That you were a victim of his manipulation, just like me. His expression softened slightly. That's why I gave you the choice. That's why I'm telling you now. Because you deserve the whole truth. Anita looked between them, her father broken and crying on the concrete, her husband cold and controlled beside him. What happens now? She asked quietly. That's up to you. Taeyang's voice was gentle now. He's your father. The debt is paid. Your marriage settled that. But the betrayal remains. How you want to handle that is your choice. Devin looked up at her hopefully. Baby girl, Anita, please. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm still your father. You're nothing to me. The words came out calm, final. You used me. You manipulated me. You turned the most vulnerable parts of me into leverage for your mistakes. Anita crouched down to look him in the eyes. Mom would be ashamed of you. I'm ashamed of you. And I'm done. She stood, turning to Taeyang. Let him go. He's not worth our time. Taeyang studied her face for a long moment, then nodded to Minjun. Cut him loose. Get him out of Seattle. I don't want to see his face again. Minjun cut Devin's zip ties. Devin scrambled to his feet, looking between them. Anita, please. Get out, Dad, before I change my mind and let my husband do what he originally wanted to do. Devin fled, limping, crying, destroyed. When the warehouse door slammed behind him, silence fell. Anita stood very still, trying to process everything. The betrayal, the manipulation, the fact that every letter she'd written had been part of her father's con. Anita, Taeyang's voice was soft. Are you? Don't. She held up a hand. Don't ask if I'm okay. I'm not okay. I'm furious and hurt, and I feel like an idiot for not seeing this coming. You're not an idiot. You were grieving. He exploited that. And you knew. You knew from the start, and you still asked me to marry you. Yes. Why? If you knew it was all manipulation, why marry me at all? Taeyang moved closer, stopping just outside her personal space. Because the letters were real, Anita. Maybe your father set up the match, but he didn't write those letters. You did. And everything you told me about your loneliness, your fear, your dreams, that was real, wasn't it? Yes, she whispered. But nothing. Your father manipulated the circumstances. He didn't manipulate your heart. Taeyang reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face gently. I fell in love with the woman in those letters, not because of how I met her, but because of who she was when she thought no one was watching. Was? Anita looked up at him. Past tense? Is. Who she is. His thumb brushed her cheek. You're still her, Anita. The brave, honest, messy woman who wrote about drowning and flying and wanting to be seen. Your father's betrayal doesn't change that. Then why do I feel like everything was a lie? Because he made you doubt yourself. That's what manipulators do. They make you question your own reality. Taeyang's voice was fierce now. But I'm telling you the truth. What we had in those letters was real. What we have now is real. And your father doesn't get to take that from us. Anita's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. I don't know how to trust this. How to trust us. Then don't trust it yet, but don't throw it away either. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her carefully. Let me prove it's real. Let me show you that I see you, not because your father set us up, but because you showed me who you were, and I chose you anyway. Anita broke then, pressing her face against his chest, letting the tears come. All the grief, the betrayal, the fear, it poured out of her while Taeyang held her steady. I hate him, she sobbed. I hate that he did this. I hate that I still love him anyway. I know. I hated my father too. For dying, for leaving debts, for making me into this. He rested his chin on top of her head. But we're not our fathers, Anita. We get to choose who we become. They stood like that for a long time, in an abandoned warehouse, under a single light, holding each other like anchors against the storm. When Anita finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clear. Take me home, she said. Your apartment or your home, our home, whatever that is. She took a shaky breath. I'm done hiding. I'm done letting fear make my choices. Taeyang's expression transformed, hope and relief and something deeper flickering across his features. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. She managed a broken smile. Someone once told me that being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means being afraid and doing it anyway. He smiled, genuine, warm. Smart man. Sometimes. Taeyang took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Come on, Mrs. Park. Let me show you what home looks like. Taeyang's home was not what Anita expected. She'd pictured something cold and modern, all glass and steel like his hotel suite. Instead, he drove her to a renovated craftsman house in Queen Anne with a garden out front and warm light glowing through the windows. This is yours? She asked as they pulled into the driveway. Ours now. He killed the engine. I bought it 6 years ago, before everything fell apart. It was supposed to be somewhere to disappear to when the king of Busan got too heavy to carry. Inside was even more surprising. Hardwood floors, exposed brick, Furniture that looked lived in rather than showroom perfect. Books lined the walls. A record player sat in one corner. It felt like a home, not a stronghold. Your letters mentioned you like to read, Taeyang said, watching her take it in. I thought you might appreciate the library. He gestured to a room off the main living area, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a reading chair by the window, soft lighting. Anita's throat tightened. You built this for me? I built it for whoever I became when I got out of prison. Turns out that person wanted to share it with you. She walked through the house slowly, taking in details. Korean art on the walls, a kitchen that looked actually used, a bedroom with a massive bed and more windows overlooking the garden. Where's your room? She asked. This is my room. But it's yours too if you want it. Taeyang leaned against the doorframe. Or there's a guest room down the hall. Your choice. Always your choice. Anita looked at the bed. King-sized, inviting, terrifying. I don't know if I'm ready to share a bed, she admitted. Then don't. Use the guest room. We'll take this at whatever pace you need. You keep saying that, keep giving me choices. Why? Because I want you to choose me. His voice was raw, honest. Not because you're forced to. Not because of debt or manipulation or obligation, but because you actively want to be here, with me. Anita turned to face him. What if I never choose that? What if 6 months from now, I still want the annulment? Pain flickered across his face, but his voice stayed steady. Then I'll sign the papers and let you go. Because I want you happy more than I want you trapped. God, this man, this dangerous, complicated, honest man. I'm going to use the guest room, Anita said quietly. For now, but can we still talk at night, like we did on the phone? Taeyang's expression softened. Every night, if you want. I want. They fell into a rhythm over the next 2 weeks. Mornings. Taeyang made coffee and they ate breakfast together before Anita left for work. Days. She shelved books and helped patrons while he ran his import-export business from the home office. Evenings. They cooked dinner together, him teaching her Korean recipes, her teaching him Jamaican ones. Nights. They talked about everything and nothing, about the letters, about their pasts, about what they wanted from the future. It was domestic in a way that should have felt wrong but somehow felt right. Tell me something you've never told anyone, Taeyang said one night, both of them in the living room, her curled on the couch with tea, him in the armchair with whiskey. I wanted to be a writer, Anita admitted. Not a librarian. A writer. I had notebooks full of stories I never finished, characters I never developed. But after my mom died, I stopped. Couldn't find the words anymore. Why not? Because writing requires hope, and I didn't have any left. Taeyang was quiet for a moment. Do you have hope now? I'm starting to, against my better judgment. He smiled. My turn. Something I've never told anyone. I'm afraid I'm too broken to be loved. That even if you choose me, eventually you'll see all the damaged parts and leave like everyone else. Anita's heart clenched. I'm not everyone else. Prove it. Stay. I'm here, aren't I? For now. But I want forever. The weight of that confession hung in the air. Forever is a long time, Taeyang. Not long enough. Things shifted in week 3. Anita came home from work to find Taeyang in the kitchen, cooking, sleeves rolled up to reveal his full arm tattoos. He'd changed from his usual dress shirt into a simple black t-shirt, and she could see the dragon tattoo continued across his shoulder, disappearing beneath the fabric. He looked domestic, safe, beautiful. And suddenly she wanted to kiss him, not the careful, formal kiss from their wedding, but a real kiss, the kind that meant something. Hi, she said, setting down her bag. He looked up, smiling. Hi, how was work? Good, boring, the usual. She moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. What are you making? Bulgogi, thought we could try something new. Smells amazing. She was standing very close now, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin. Anita. His voice was low, careful. What are you doing? I don't know. She reached up, fingers hovering near the collar of his shirt where the dragon's head emerged. Can I? He nodded, not breathing. She traced the tattoo, the scales, the fierce expression, the detail that must have taken hours to ink. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's a scar, a permanent reminder of choices I can't undo. Maybe. Or maybe it's art. Maybe it's both. She looked up at him. You contain multitudes, Park Tae-young. His hand came up to cover hers, pressing her palm flat against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, fast, unsteady. So do you, Anita Park. The name, her married name, sent a shiver through her. Kiss me, she heard herself say. Are you sure? No, but I want to anyway. He cupped her face with both hands, thumbs brushing her cheekbones, and kissed her. This wasn't like the wedding kiss. This was heat and want and 2 years of letters poured into contact. His mouth moved against hers with controlled desperation, like he was starving but trying not to devour. Anita's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. He made a sound, half groan, half surrender, and deepened the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tae-young rested his forehead against hers. Wow, he whispered. Yeah, Anita's voice shook. Wow, do you want to stop? I should want to stop. But do you? No. He smiled against her lips. Good, because I've been wanting to do that since you opened your apartment door and looked at me like I was dangerous and fascinating in equal measure. You are dangerous and fascinating. So are you. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, like he was learning her. His hand slid from her face to her waist, pulling her flush against him. Anita felt herself melting, surrendering to the heat between them. But then reality crashed back. She pulled away, breathing hard. Wait, stop. Tae-young immediately released her, stepping back. Too much? No, yes, I don't know. She pressed her hands to her face. This is moving fast. I need to think. Okay. That's okay. He ran a hand through his hair, looking beautifully wrecked. Take all the time you need. I don't want to lead you on. You're not. You kissed me because you wanted to. If you need time to figure out what that means, take it. He smiled, soft and understanding. I'm not going anywhere, Anita. She looked at him, this patient, dangerous, complicated man, and felt something shift in her chest. What if I'm falling for you? She whispered. What if this stops being about the debt and starts being real, and then it all falls apart anyway? Then we'll have tried. We'll have had 6 months of real, instead of a lifetime of wondering what if. You make it sound so simple. It is simple, scary, but simple. He reached out, took her hand gently. I'm falling for you too, Anita. I've been falling since letter number 1 was, so we're in this together, falling, scared, hoping we can fly. Anita squeezed his hand. No safety net? No safety net, just us. That's terrifying. Best things usually are. She studied their linked hands, her dark skin against his lighter tone, her small fingers wrapped in his larger ones. Okay, she said finally. Let's try. Really try. Not just the 6-month arrangement, but actual trying to make this work. You mean it? I'm terrified, and probably making a huge mistake, but yes, I mean it. Tae-young pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was precious. Thank you. For choosing me. For giving us a chance. Don't thank me yet. I'm still probably going to panic and freak out. I'm counting on it. Keeps things interesting. Anita laughed. The first real laugh she'd managed in weeks. And standing there in his arms, in the kitchen that smelled like Korean barbecue, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. 3 months into their marriage, things changed again. Minjun showed up at the house unannounced, his expression grim. "Boss, we have a problem." Tae-yang was in his office, Anita working on her laptop at the desk beside his. They'd started spending afternoons together, her writing, she'd picked it up again, slowly, him handling business. It felt right, working side by side. "What problem?" Tae-yang asked. "Devin Baptiste is back in Seattle, and he's talking to the FBI." The temperature in the room dropped. "Talking about what?" Anita asked, fear spiking through her. Minjun's eyes flicked to her, then back to Tae-yang. "About the organization. About deals, routes, operations. He's trying to trade information for witness protection." "He's trying to get himself killed," Tae-yang said quietly. "The FBI can't protect him from what he knows." "There's more." Minjun pulled out his phone, showed them a surveillance photo. "He's also telling them about your marriage. Claims it was coerced, that we're holding his daughter hostage." Anita felt the blood drain from her face. "He's lying. I chose this. I know that. You know that. But the FBI doesn't." Tae-yang stood, his expression hardening into the king of Busan. "They'll investigate. They'll question Anita. And if they think she's being coerced, they'll try to extract her." "I won't let them," Anita said immediately. "I'll tell them the truth, that I married you willingly." "They won't believe you. Not if your father is painting me as a monster who threatened your life." "Then what do we do?" Tae-young looked at her for a long moment, something painful flickering in his eyes. "We end this, now, before it gets worse." He turned to Minjun. "Draw up annulment papers. Make it clean, legal, no complications." "What?" Anita stood. "No, I'm not leaving." "You have to. If the FBI thinks you're a victim, they'll protect you. But if they think you're complicit, you'll go down with me when they build their case." "I don't care." "I care." Taeyang's voice cracked. "I care about you being safe, about you having a life after this, about you not paying for my choices. You don't get to make this decision alone." "I'm not. I'm making it for us. Because I love you too much to let you sacrifice yourself for me." The words hung in the air, the first time either of them had said it out loud. Anita felt tears burning her eyes. "You love me?" "Of course I love you. I've loved you since you wrote about drowning and asked if I'd stay or run. I've loved you through 214 letters and 3 months of marriage and every moment in between." His voice was raw, honest. "But love means letting you go before you get hurt." "I'm already hurt. Leaving will hurt worse." "Staying could cost you your freedom, your future, everything you've worked for." He moved closer, taking her face in his hands. "I can survive prison again. I can survive losing everything else. But I can't survive knowing I destroyed you." "You're not destroying me. You're saving me. From loneliness. From hiding. From a half-life where I never take risks because I'm too scared to jump." Anita grabbed his wrists, holding on. "You taught me to fly, Tae-young. Don't ask me to go back to drowning." "Anita, no. You told me we'd do this honestly. That we'd choose each other actively, not passively. So I'm choosing. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. And I'm not leaving. If you stay, they'll investigate you, question you, maybe even charge you as an accessory. Then I'll face that. With you. You could go to prison. Then we'll both know what those letters felt like from the other side." Taeyong made a sound, half laugh, half sob. "You're insane. You married me. What does that make you? Lucky, terrified, completely in love with a woman who's too brave for her own good." He kissed her then, desperate, deep, like he was trying to memorize her. Anita kissed him back with everything she had, pouring 3 months of fear and hope and love into contact. When they broke apart, she whispered against his lips, "I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me." Promise? Forever. However long that is. Minjun cleared his throat. Boss, what do you want me to tell the FBI when they show up? Taeyang looked at Anita, his eyes searching hers one more time. Whatever he saw there made him smile, fierce and determined. Tell them Mrs. Park is exactly where she wants to be, and if they have questions, she'll answer them. Honestly. He turned back to his second. And Minjun? Start building our defense, because we're not running, we're fighting. You sure about this, boss? You could disappear, start over. I'm sure. Because I'm done running from my choices. And I'm done letting other people's betrayals define my life. He pulled Anita close. We face this together, whatever comes. Together, Anita echoed. The FBI investigation lasted 4 months. They questioned Anita 17 times, searched the house, monitored their communications, built a case that ultimately fell apart when Anita testified, under oath, with full legal representation, that she'd married Taeyang willingly, that she loved him, and that her father's claims were lies born of guilt and desperation. Devin Baptiste's credibility crumbled. His witness protection deal fell through. The FBI closed the investigation with insufficient evidence. Taeyang's organization survived, though he'd started transitioning to legitimate business. Actual import-export, no quotation marks. Cleaning up his empire piece by piece. It would take years, maybe decades. But he was trying. Anita, meanwhile, had done something unexpected. She'd published her first book, a collection of letters. Fiction, she claimed, though anyone who read them knew they were real. The story of two people who found each other through words, fell in love through honesty, and chose each other despite every reason not to. It became a bestseller. Now, 6 months and 4 days after their wedding, they sat in their garden, the one Anita had started planting with Korean and Jamaican flowers, watching the sun set over Seattle. We made it, Anita said, her head on his shoulder. 6 months. The original agreement is up. It is. Taeyang pressed a kiss to her hair. Should we draw up those annulment papers? Probably. But I don't want to. I want to stay married to you, for real, forever. He pulled back to look at her, eyes shining. Yeah? Yeah. You keep your promises, Park Taeyang. You said you'd show me Naomi was real. You did. She smiled. Turns out she was real all along. She was just scared. And now? Now she's learning to fly. Taeyang kissed her, soft, sweet, full of promise. I love you, Anita Park. I love you too. Even though you're dangerous and complicated and you quote my own letters back at me. Especially because of that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky turn pink and gold. Taeyang? That dream I used to have, about drowning. I don't have it anymore. No. Now I dream about swimming, sometimes alone, sometimes with you, but always swimming, never sinking. He tightened his arms around her. Good, because we've got a lot of swimming ahead of us. No safety net? No safety net, just us, the water, and the choice to keep swimming. Anita looked up at the man who'd started as words on paper, became a threat at her door, and transformed into the person who saw her most clearly. I choose swimming, she said. With me? Always with you. And in the garden they'd planted together, surrounded by flowers from 2 different worlds, Anita and Taeyang made a new promise. Not written in letters this time, but spoken aloud, honest and real, to choose each other every day. For however long forever turned out to be, love isn't always safe. Sometimes it's scary and messy and built on broken pieces. Sometimes it starts with lies and becomes truth. Sometimes the drowning dream becomes a swimming dream, not because the water got shallower, but because you found someone willing to swim beside you. Anita and Taeyang's story reminds us that people are capable of change, that honesty can bloom even from manipulation, and that the bravest thing we can do is choose love when every logical reason says we shouldn't. Their forever isn't guaranteed, but it's real. And sometimes that's enough. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in second chances and complicated love stories. Drop a comment telling us, would you ever write to an inmate? Would you choose love over safety? Thank you for being part of this community. See you in the next story.